Today, it is the norm to scoff at authoritarian dictatorships such as North Korea or the Taliban and wonder how people fell for the totalitarian claptrap. And yet, they turn around and oppose the democratic expansion in their own countries. Even from my own family, after I volunteered to help organize early voting during the legislative elections, I heard rhetoric supportive of banning early or mail-in voting or more stringent voting requirements with the belief that some people didn't deserve to vote. Why is it that people think that those who vote early don't deserve to vote? Are they accusing people who can't take election day off of being lazy when it's school or work that often compels them? Isn't democracy about everyone having the right to express their voice? Or is it only for some people? If your opinions are as good for the people as they say they are, why not count every vote and see what everyone says? Because when it gets down to it, the core implication is that there are citizens worthy of voting and those who are not. In other words, a Übermensch and an Untermensch. The core tenet of this thinking is that there's a group that the law protects, the in group, and a group that the law applies to, the out group. And the in group keeps getting smaller and smaller to the point that those who were once comfortable in the in group may one day find themselves on the out, on the other side of the pitchforks. People claim to support democracy, but many underestimate its fragility. Worldwide, authoritarian parties are on the rise. Of course, some of this is sparked by the refugee crisis, as the age-old mentality of us versus them, sparked by 1,000 years of conflict between Christianity and Islam, demonize those who need help the most. Social media and the recent rise in religious fundamentalist terrorism isn't helping either. But the more fundamental part is nostalgia. As modern life goes harder, people often seek to return to tradition these parties promise. Older people tend to miss when they were young. It can be older Koreans thinking about how good life was during the eras of military dictators, such as Park Chung-hee or Chun Doo-hwan. It can be Russians being nostalgic for the Soviet Union. As the old joke goes, when asked her thoughts on the time of Stalin, an old woman in Russia said she preferred these times. When asked why, she said, "During Stalin's time, my joints did not ache. Men desired me, and I am a thief." So funny until people start talking about actually rebuilding the Soviet Union. But it's not like anyone's actually saying that, right? But it's not just the elderly expressing the sentiment. Many young people, mostly young men, have been talking of visions of a glorious nostalgic past that they weren't around for. They deride modern media, and while there is a good amount to say about the drop-off when it comes to novelty and writing quality, they seem fixated on the presence of women or minorities, reactivating the us versus them mentality, that things were better when the out group, the Untermensch, weren't being represented by media, blaming them for the drop of quality. It can be something as innocent as being hyper-fixated on the Roman Empire or medieval Europe as a time of glory and greater purpose, ignoring the more inconvenient truth of these times. It can even be something about being sold on how great of a time the 1960s were, saying, "I was born in the wrong generation." Never mind the lack of technology, the advanced medical care or civil rights, the Red Scare, the rampant racism, sexism, amongst other things. When sold the idea of going back, people tend to ignore the unfortunate implications and focus on the glamour and the glory. The idea of a glorious past is one of the most popular selling ideas. Things were simpler back then, is what people say. But if life is simple, does it mean that life is good? When people say to make a country great again, you must ask, when was it great at exactly? Who was it great for? And what exactly is wrong with how things are today, or how things could be? When people argue for law and order, you must ask, law for whom? And what do they mean by order? Are they saying that there should be a natural order of society with some people at the top and others who know their place? Because that is how things were for the majority of history. It's important to recognize history, and we can learn a great many lessons from it. But we shouldn't strive to live in history. When we do that, we tend to overlook all the negatives. These lessons came from issues that popped up for a reason. So why should we want to go back? We adapted, we learned, we moved on. There's nothing wrong with leaning on our past experiences to help guide us. But we shouldn't return to these times because these problems will pop back up. Instead, we should look to the present and the future, using our past experiences to inform decisions and actions, but always with an eye towards progress and improvement. Thank you.